A young woman wakes in a hospital after a brutal accident. But the doctor watching over her isn't there to save her. In the dead of night, footsteps echo where no one should be, and a shadow stands watching her breathe. As her past comes clawing back and something inhuman closes in, one question remains. Who will reach her first, the living or the dead? Watch until the end to uncover the truth. And if you crave more chilling stories like this, hit subscribe and share your ideas in the comments. Asterisk. It began with the sound of a heartbeat. Low, heavy, too close. Nina Satong could feel it in her ears as she lay in the hospital bed, staring at the dark corner of the room. She told herself it was just exhaustion, just the monitors. But the shadow didn't move. Dr. Henry Cole had been her physician for 3 weeks. Polite smile. Perfectly pressed white coat. Always calling her by name with a softness that felt too personal. The nurses whispered sometimes when he left the room. She caught words like strange and overly attentive, but in a place where people's lives hung in the balance, that didn't seem like a crime. Until she saw him in the reflection of her window at 3 a.m. He wasn't holding a chart. He wasn't even looking at her vitals. He was watching her breathe. Nina wasn't from here. Her Thai mother's teachings still whispered in her mind. Never look someone directly in the eye if you suspect bad spirits. And always trust the feeling in your chest before the words in your ears. Her chest told her to run. But she couldn't. The accident had left her ribs cracked and her leg bound in steel. She was trapped, with only the thin hospital curtains and the polite voice of Dr. Cole between her and whatever he wanted. One morning, she woke to find a tray of food with dishes she hadn't ordered. Sticky rice, grilled pork skewers, and a small bowl of green papaya salad. Exactly the way her mother made it. No one in this hospital had ever cooked Thai food, except someone who'd been listening. When she asked the nurse about it, the woman's face went pale. "We don't serve that here." That night, she heard the scrape of shoes outside her door, the click of the lock turning, and his voice, low, calm, almost affectionate. "You shouldn't have asked about the food, Nina." Her pulse hammered in her ears as the door creaked open. The light stayed off, and his silhouette filled the doorway, carrying something in his hand that glinted when it caught the moonlight. She tried to push herself up, pain tearing through her ribs, but he was already inside. The door closed with a soft click, sealing them in darkness. "I've been taking care of you," he said. His voice so close now she could smell the faint trace of antiseptic mixed with aftershave. "You don't know how many people here would let you die if I wasn't watching." Her eyes adjusted just enough to make out the object in his hand. A scalpel. Not one from the clean surgical packs. This one was old, the handle worn smooth, like it had been kept for something personal. Nina's mind raced. Her mother's voice came again, from years ago in their kitchen in San Francisco. "If danger comes, distract the spirit. Confuse it. Make it question itself." She forced her breathing to slow. "You made the food," she whispered. "You remembered everything I told you about my mother." His shoulders relaxed just slightly. A flicker of pride crossed his face in the dim light. "I listened to you, Nina. More than anyone else ever has." Outside, somewhere down the hall, a phone began to ring. It was faint, but in the quiet room, it sounded like a lifeline. If she could get him to turn his head, just for a second. Her hand inched toward the metal water jug on the bedside table, fingertips brushing its cold surface. But his eyes locked back on her, sharper now, as if he could see the thought forming. "You're not going to call for help," he said softly. "Because you know I'm the only one who's been telling you the truth." The phone in the distance stopped. The silence felt heavier now, pressing against her chest. Then, from somewhere outside the window, came the faint crunch of footsteps on gravel. Low, steady, getting closer. Dr. Cole's head tilted, listening. His grip on the scalpel tightened, the faint metal edge catching a shard of moonlight. Nina's heart thudded so hard she thought he could hear it. He moved toward the window, peering through the blinds just enough to see the parking lot below. The footsteps stopped. "Who's out there?" His voice was sharper now, no trace of the calm he used with her. No answer. Just the sound of a car door shutting somewhere in the darkness. He turned back to her, slower this time, studying her as if trying to read whether she was involved. You told someone. It wasn't a question. She shook her head, forcing her voice to stay small. I can't even leave this bed. How could I tell anyone? His gaze flicked to the water jug by her side, then back to her face. He stepped closer, until the shadow of his frame swallowed the moonlight across her blanket. You'd be surprised what people can do when they're desperate. From outside the door came the faint squeak of a cart's wheels, the night nurse doing rounds. Dr. Cole froze, eyes darting to the handle. The sound grew nearer, each squeak a thread pulling him closer to being discovered. Nina's fingers tightened around the cold jug. If she moved now, she might have one chance, just one. The wheels stopped directly in front of her door. Then a gentle knock. Nina, are you awake? Dr. Cole didn't move. The scalpel gleamed in his hand, his body blocking the door like a wall. Nina's voice caught in her throat. If she called out, he could silence her before the nurse even touched the handle. If she stayed quiet, the nurse might walk away, leaving her alone with him. The knock came again, a little firmer this time. I just need to check your vitals. Dr. Cole's eyes narrowed, and he raised a finger to his lips. A slow, deliberate assault. Nina felt the weight of every second. Her ribs ached, her palms were slick with sweat, and her fingers clenched tighter around the jug. She could hear her own breathing, shallow, shaky, too loud. The doorknob rattled softly, the nurse testing if it was locked. Dr. Cole stepped toward it, his other hand sliding the scalpel into the deep pocket of his coat. When he spoke, his voice was warm again, the professional mask sliding neatly back into place. She's resting, he said through the door. I'll log her vitals for you. Go ahead with your other rounds. Too long. The nurse didn't respond right away, and Nina caught the faint shadow of her figure in the frosted glass panel. It lingered, watching. Then, footsteps slowly moved away down the hall. Dr. Cole turned back to her, his smile soft and almost tender. See, told you. Just us. But then, faint, almost impossible to hear, came another sound. Not from the hall. From outside the window. 3 short taps against the glass. Dr. Cole froze mid-step, his head snapping toward the window. The blinds shivered slightly, as if touched by the night air. Nina's pulse roared in her ears. 3 taps. Then 2 more. It wasn't random. It was a pattern. Dr. Cole crossed the room slowly, each footfall deliberate, his coat brushing the side of the bed as he passed. He lifted one slat of the blinds with his fingertip. Moonlight spilled through the narrow gap, cutting a silver line across his face. Outside, a figure stood in the shadows near the maintenance shed. Too far to make out features, but she saw the faint outline of a hand, raised in a slow wave. Dr. Cole didn't wave back. He lowered the blind, the slat snapping shut with a sharp click. When he turned toward her, there was no mask of kindness now, only suspicion. Who is that? The question was low, almost a growl. Nina shook her head, willing her voice to stay calm. I don't know. I swear. His eyes darted toward the door, then back to the window, weighing something. Finally, he stepped closer to her, the smell of his aftershave heavy in the air. You're not going anywhere, he said. Not until I know exactly who's trying to find you. Before she could respond, the taps came again. Louder, faster. And this time they weren't coming from the window. They were coming from inside the room, just behind the closed bathroom door. Dr. Cole's head snapped toward the bathroom, his whole body going still. The sound had been sharp, deliberate, knuckles against wood. Nina's throat tightened. She hadn't seen anyone go in there. She'd been watching him the entire time. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the overhead light. Then the knock came again. 3 quick raps. Then 2 more, the same pattern from the window. Dr. Cole stepped toward the door, his hand sliding back into his coat pocket where the scalpel waited. His voice was calm now, but laced with an edge she hadn't heard before. "Who's in there?" No answer. Just the faint creak of the floorboards under someone's weight. Nina's hands gripped the water jug, every muscle in her arms trembling. If someone was inside, they might be her only chance. Or they might be worse than him. Cole reached the bathroom door and wrapped his fingers around the handle. He glanced back at her once, almost as if daring her to try something, and then twisted it open. The door swung inward. For a heartbeat, Nina could see nothing but darkness. Then a shape stepped forward. Barefoot. A girl, no older than 12, her long black hair hanging damp over her face. She lifted her head just enough for Nina to see her eyes, wide, unblinking, and fixed not on Cole but on her. Dr. Cole didn't speak. His fingers twitched on the scalpel's handle, but he didn't move closer. The girl stepped fully into the light, water dripping from the ends of her hair onto the tile. Her hospital gown clung to her small frame, the fabric stained with something dark at the hem. Nina's breath caught. There was no hospital bracelet on her wrist. The girl's gaze stayed locked on her, as if Dr. Cole wasn't even there. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, but each word seemed to echo inside the room. "They said you wouldn't believe me." Cole's jaw tightened. "What is this?" he demanded, turning toward Nina like she had orchestrated the whole thing. But before Nina could answer, the girl lifted her hand. Her fingers trembled as she pointed, not at Nina, not at Cole, but at the corner of the room near the window. "He's not the only one watching you." Cole spun toward the corner, but there was nothing there. Only the faint ripple of the curtain in the night breeze. And then, without warning, the overhead light flickered once, twice, and went out completely. In the darkness, Nina heard movement, not just in front of her, behind her bed. The sound was slow, deliberate, like someone dragging their fingertips along the metal frame. Nina's chest tightened, her grip on the water jug slick with sweat. Dr. Cole's breathing quickened in the dark. "Who's there?" he barked, his voice losing that controlled precision. No answer came, only the faint shuffle of footsteps circling behind her. Nina tried to twist in the bed, her ribs screaming with pain, but the movement made her dizzy. Somewhere near her ear, a low whisper threaded through the blackness. "You need to leave before he does it again." The voice wasn't the girl's. It was older, raspier, like dry leaves scraping over stone. Cole moved toward the bed, his silhouette briefly cutting across the thin strip of moonlight from the window. He was holding the scalpel higher now, ready, his attention darting between Nina and the shadowed corners of the room. The girl was gone. Just gone. A sharp metallic clink sounded from the floor beside the bed, something dropping out of sight. Cole crouched to grab it, but then froze, his shoulders stiff. When he rose again, he was holding a small silver pendant, the chain tangled around his fingers. Even in the dim light, Nina recognized it instantly. It was the one she'd lost the night of her accident. Only it was clean. Too clean. As if it had never touched the blood-soaked asphalt. Cole's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Where did you get this?" Before she could answer, the whispering voice returned, closer now, almost in her hair. "He's not asking you. He's asking me." Nina's skin prickled, every nerve on edge. The air around her felt colder, heavier, like the room itself was holding its breath. Dr. Cole's eyes flicked over her shoulder, to a spot just above her head. His jaw clenched. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but not to her. The whisper came again, curling through the darkness. "You didn't tell her what you did, to the others." Nina's grip on the jug faltered. Others. Her mind scrambled to make sense of it, but Cole's face told her enough, the flash of panic quickly buried under his practiced calm. He stepped forward, leaning over her bed, his shadow blotting out the faint light from the blinds. "She doesn't need to know." The voice hissed sharper now. She already does. A sudden weight pressed against the mattress near her feet, as if someone had climbed onto the bed. Nina froze. She could feel the shift in the springs, the slow crawl of that weight moving toward her. Cole's gaze stayed fixed on whatever was approaching, his hand tightening around the scalpel until his knuckles whitened. Then, as if yanked, his head jerked toward the corner by the window. Nina followed his glance, and in the sliver of moonlight, a second figure stood there. Unmoving. Its face obscured by the shadows, but the shape. It wasn't human. The outline was wrong. Shoulders too narrow, neck too long, head tilting at an unnatural angle. Didn't breathe. It didn't blink. Nina's throat tightened, her body instinctively trying to shrink back into the pillow. Dr. Cole's voice was low now, almost trembling, but steady enough to carry authority. Stay where you are. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, only tilted its head farther, like it was studying her from a distance. Then the light from the window caught it just enough to reveal skin that wasn't skin at all, smooth and pale like porcelain. Its mouth was painted into a faint, frozen smile. Cole's hand shot out to grab Nina's wrist, pulling her attention back to him. "You can't look at it too long," he whispered. "That's how it chooses." Her ribs ached with every rapid breath, but she couldn't stop staring. Something in that fixed smile was pulling at her, like a thread unraveling in her mind. Memories she didn't want, the accident, the screech of tires, the flash of someone standing in the road, all spilling forward too fast to hold back. The thing in the corner took one step closer. The floor didn't creak. The air didn't shift. Simply was closer. Behind her, the older voice whispered again. "You brought it with you the night you almost died." Cole turned sharply toward the sound, his knuckles white around the scalpel. But in that split second of distraction, the figure in the corner was gone. And then came the sound. Not from the window, not from the bathroom, but from directly beneath her bed. The faint scrape of something dragging its nails across the metal frame. The sound was slow, deliberate, metal on metal, sending vibrations up through the mattress. Nina's fingers tightened around the sheets, every muscle in her body screaming to get away, but her legs felt heavy, pinned by fear. Dr. Cole crouched, scalpel poised, his eyes locked on the shadowed space beneath the bed. "Stay still," he muttered, though his voice shook enough to betray him. The scraping stopped. Silence, thick and unnatural. Then, in one sudden motion, something latched onto his wrist from the darkness below. A pale, thin hand, fingers far too long, joints bending at wrong angles, clutching him with a strength that made his arm jerk violently. Cole shouted, trying to pull free, but the thing yanked harder, dragging his arm halfway under the bed. The scalpel clattered to the floor. Nina's pulse roared in her ears. She could see the tendons straining in his neck as he fought against whatever was pulling him down. His eyes, wide and wild, flicked to her. "Help me!" She reached for the jug, her fingers brushing the cold handle, and froze. From beneath the bed, alongside Cole's muffled struggling, came a second sound. A low, rhythmic breathing. Not human. Too deep. Too slow. The long fingers tightened their grip, and Cole's face twisted in pain. Then in the dim light, something else began to emerge. Not the figure, but a second hand gripping the frame, hauling something closer to the edge. The second hand was worse than the first. The skin stretched thin over sharp bone, nails cracked and blackened like old stone. It gripped the frame with a wet, sticky sound, as though it had just pulled itself from the earth. Cole's breathing turned frantic, his heels digging into the floor as he tried to brace himself. "Get it off!" he choked out, the tendons in his neck straining. Nina's pulse thundered in her ears. She tightened her grip on the jug, forcing her aching body to lean forward. Every instinct screamed not to look under the bed, but she had to. She lowered herself just enough to see. Two pale eyes stared back at her from the shadows. They didn't blink. They didn't move. They simply waited, as if deciding which of them to take first. The breathing grew louder, so deep it made the mattress vibrate beneath her. Then a voice, wet and gurgling, rose from the dark. "You left me there, Nina." Her heart seized. She knew that voice. Even through the distortion she recognized it, from the night of the crash. The man in the road. The hands tightened on Cole's arm, and with one violent jerk, his upper body was yanked half under the bed. His scream ripped through the room, echoing off the walls. The figure's eyes shifted to her again. And then, in that same drowning, broken voice, it whispered, "Your turn." Nina's breath caught in her throat, her fingers numb around the jug's handle. The mattress dipped near her hips as something pressed upward from beneath, slow and deliberate, like a predator rising from deep water. Dr. Cole thrashed, his legs kicking violently, heels scraping the tile. One shoe slipped off and spun across the floor, hitting the far wall with a hollow thud. His scream broke into hoarse gasps, his free hand clawing at the edge of the bed frame. The pale eyes below never left hers. They seemed to grow larger, brighter, as though the darkness itself was pushing them closer. She wanted to move, to throw herself off the bed, to run, to do anything, but her body felt locked in place. The voice came again, closer now, vibrating through the metal frame. "You saw me, and you didn't stop." The weight under her shifted. Cold fingers brushed her ankle. That was enough. With a burst of adrenaline, Nina swung the metal jug down toward the hands clutching Cole. The sound was sickening, bone or something like it, cracking under the blow. A hiss, low and furious, rose from beneath, and the fingers released Cole instantly. He scrambled backward on the floor, panting, his eyes wild, but before either of them could react, the thing moved. The bed shuddered as the frame groaned, and a shape began to rise from underneath. It unfolded in ways that didn't make sense, limbs bending where no joints should be, its head tilting until the porcelain-like face came into the thin beam of moonlight. The frozen smile was wider now, too wide, and it was no longer looking at Cole. It was looking only at her. The thing's neck stretched unnaturally, vertebrae clicking one by one in the silence. Its head tilted so far to the side the smile seemed upside down. Nina's grip on the jug trembled. Cole, still on the floor, scrambled toward the door, his shoes squeaking against the tile. But before he could reach the handle, the thing's arm shot out, impossibly long, and slammed the door shut without ever taking its eyes off her. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. Cole froze, his back pressed to the wall, breathing hard. Whatever authority or control he once had was gone. He looked just as trapped as she was. The porcelain face leaned closer, the false smile inches from hers. The air around it was cold, sharp, like breathing in broken glass. "You remember," it whispered, though its mouth never moved. Memories she'd buried clawed their way back. Rain-slick asphalt, headlights cutting through the dark, a figure standing in the middle of the road, her hands gripping the wheel but not stopping. Her chest heaved. "I didn't mean to." The thing's head snapped upright with a sharp crack. Its smile vanished. The eyes, pale and endless, hardened into something hungry. Cole's voice was a broken rasp behind her. "It's not here for me anymore." The lights flickered once, twice. And when they steadied, the thing was gone. But Nina felt it, breathing, right behind her ear. The breath was icy, curling against her skin like fog seeping under a door. Every hair on her neck rose. She didn't dare turn. Her mind screamed to, but something deep inside, instinct maybe, told her that if she looked, it would be the last thing she ever saw. Cole's eyes were wide, fixed on something just over her shoulder. His lips moved without sound at first, then barely a whisper escaped. "Don't move." The cold breath lingered for another heartbeat, then slid away, retreating toward the center of the room. Nina's shoulders sagged with shaky relief, but she still couldn't bring herself to look. Cole edged along the wall, moving toward her with slow, deliberate steps, his gaze never leaving whatever was in front of her. When he got close enough, he reached for her wrist. "On my count," he breathed. "We run." Her pulse pounded in her ears. 1. The lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness. From somewhere ahead, the voice came back. Not a whisper now, but deep and resonant, like it was speaking from inside the walls. You can run, but you'll still end up where it happened. The temperature in the room plummeted. The metal frame of the bed creaked under a sudden, unseen weight. Cole didn't finish the count. He yanked her arm and they bolted for the door. But before his hand touched the handle, the porcelain face was there, inches from his, blocking the way. Cole froze mid-step, his hand hovering inches from the handle. The porcelain face was so close its glassy eyes reflected his own wide stare. It didn't blink, didn't breathe. The faintest hairline cracks began to spread from the corner of its unmoving mouth, as if something underneath was trying to push through. Cole stumbled back, pulling Nina with him. The thing's head turned slowly toward her, the cracks widening. Through them, she caught a glimpse of something darker, wet, and moving beneath the porcelain shell. The voice came again, but now it sounded like two speaking at once. One deep, one high, overlapping in a way that made her skin crawl. You left me there, broken. The lights above them popped, one by one, until the only illumination came from the thin strip of moonlight through the blinds. In that pale glow, the figure stepped forward, each movement stiff, puppet-like, yet somehow deliberate. Cole's grip on her arm tightened. If it touches you. He didn't finish. The thing's arm shot out, impossibly fast, its fingers grazing her cheek. A jolt of cold sank straight into her skin, racing down her neck, through her chest. Images exploded in her mind. The accident, the shattered windshield, the man's face lit in the headlights, and then his smile. The same smile staring at her now. Cole shoved her sideways toward the window. Go, he barked. But before she could move, the thing's other hand clamped around her wrist. And the world around her began to fade, replaced by the roar of rain and the blinding white of oncoming headlights. The rain was deafening. It soaked her hair, blurred her vision, turned the asphalt into a black mirror reflecting the high beams. She was back on that road. The wheel was in her hands, her knuckles white. And there, just ahead, the figure standing in the middle of the lane, motionless. Her chest seized. She remembered the choice she didn't make. Her foot stayed on the gas. The impact came, not with a thud, but with the sickening crunch of bone against steel. The headlights dissolved into moonlight. She was back in the hospital room, but the porcelain face loomed inches from hers. Its cracks had widened fully now, pieces flaking away to reveal the ruined face beneath, the man from the road. One eye cloudy, the other burning with something she couldn't name. Cole was yelling somewhere behind her, his voice distant and distorted. She couldn't move. The cold from its touch had spread through her arm, into her chest, slowing her heart. The thing leaned closer, its breath wet and rattling. You took my life. Now you'll carry it. The blinds rattled as a wind swept through the room, though the windows were closed. The lights flickered one last time, and then shattered, plunging everything into black. In the dark, she felt the grip on her wrist tighten, pulling her forward. Cole's voice rose in a desperate shout. Nina! And then silence. The silence was suffocating, thick enough to feel against her skin. Her ears rang, searching for any sound. Cole's voice, the hum of the hospital, even the whisper of air vents, but there was nothing. Faint rhythmic drip broke through. Water. She opened her eyes, or thought she did, and found herself standing barefoot in the middle of a dim, endless hallway. The walls were the sickly yellow of old hospital paint, streaked with damp. Every few feet, a fluorescent light buzzed weakly, casting long shadows that moved without her. Her wrist still burned where the thing had held her. She touched it and felt not warmth, but an icy pulse beating under her skin, not hers. Behind her, footsteps echoed. Low. Measured. They matched her heartbeat, or maybe her heartbeat was matching them. He turned. The porcelain face was gone. It was only the man now, the one from the road. His broken features untouched by shadow, every detail sharper than she remembered. He walked toward her, hands at his sides, eyes fixed on hers. You had time to stop, he said softly, though his voice filled the hall. You chose not to. Her throat tightened. I was scared. He kept coming. You weren't scared. You were in a hurry. The hallway seemed to stretch, the lights flickering faster as he drew near. She stepped back, one pace too, but her heel met a wall. There had been no wall a moment ago. He stopped just a breath away, the cold rolling off him in waves. You took my life. Now you'll finish my walk. His ruined hand reached out, fingers brushing her cheek. The hallway lights flared white, and suddenly she was back in the middle of the rain-soaked road, headlights screaming toward her. Only this time she wasn't behind the wheel. She was standing in the lane. The lights grew larger, blinding. She heard the engine roar, felt the wet asphalt under her bare feet. And just before the impact hit, she realized the driver's face was her own. The roar of the engine swallowed everything. The rain, her heartbeat, even the panic in her mind. The headlights surged forward, and the world compressed into that one frozen instant. Nina's breath caught as the car struck, not with pain but with a crushing weight that folded the night around her. She didn't fall. Instead, the darkness opened, and she was standing once again in her hospital bed, the sheets twisted around her legs. The room was quiet. Too quiet. No sign of Dr. Cole. No sound of monitors or footsteps in the hall. Only the faint rustle of the blinds swaying in a wind that shouldn't be there. Her gaze shifted to the chair beside the bed. Someone had left a single object there. A cracked porcelain mask, its painted smile barely holding together, a dark stain along the edge. Her wrists still throbbed with that icy pulse, each beat echoing in her chest like a second heartbeat that wasn't hers. In the hallway outside, a squeak of cart wheels passed her door. Then a voice, the night nurse's, soft and polite. Good evening, doctor. Making your rounds again. Nina's blood ran cold. The answering voice came, warm and calm, just like before. Yes, just checking on my favorite patient. The footsteps drew closer, and the door handle began to turn.